What's happening, my fellow ghouls and ghoulettes? Welcome to a brand new, very different episode of Cosplay Chris. Now, I just want to put it out there. I am not a writer. I can't write to save my life. I have nothing but respect for people who are writers and who can write and can smash out some banging scripts or just do it for fun on the site. So today's video is my pitch for a direct sequel to the original 1984 A Nightmare on Elm Street. So I've had these thoughts in my head for a couple of years now, ever since Wes Craven's estate gained the rights back to A Nightmare on Elm Street. And apparently Wes's family and the estate were accepting pitches. So even at one point, Elijah Wood's production company and Elijah Wood himself pitched an idea. Apparently he's a massive horror fan, and I loved hearing that. And then from then on out, it just got my shitty little brain cells churning and thinking, what would a direct sequel be like to the original 1984 film? Let's just say we retconned Freddy's Revenge onwards. That whole timeline was just wiped out, much in the vein of Halloween 2018. Where would Nancy be? Where would Glenn be if Glenn was still alive? So a big factor also revolves around the ending, or should I say endings, of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, because there were three. There was one that we saw in the film where the car turns into Freddy essentially and gets possessed by Freddy and they all drive off, and I'm guessing Freddy eventually kills them, but then Nancy comes back for part 3. So it's one of those things where it's very Christopher Nolan-esque. It has to leave it up to your interpretation of what happens. There was a scene where they just drive off in the car and Nancy says bye to her mum, and that is it. You just see the jump rope girls. So I've got my notes here, and again, I just want to put it out there, I'm not a writer. This is just for a bit of fun, ghouls and ghoulettes, because I'm such a massive Elm Street fan. I have these thoughts of where these characters would be now if it was a direct sequel, and what Freddy would be doing, what Freddy would look like. So it's just gonna be a bit of fun, and with that, I also want you to drop your comments down below with your direct sequel pitch. If you guys have had these thoughts, like when Halloween 2018 came out, you thought, what would it be like if Blumhouse gave this treatment to the Elm Street franchise? So before I go any further, the article that I am going off is from comingsoon.net. And also, according to Bloody Disgusting, Wes Craven's estate is now actively taking pictures for a new Nightmare on Elm Street. The US rights to the movie and to Freddy Krueger, who was created by Craven, were acquired by the estate about 2 months prior. The outlet notes that Wes Craven's estate is apparently interested in feature pictures as well as pictures for a possible HBO Max series. Please don't do Freddy's Nightmares again. With no further details or names have been brought up yet, Elijah Wood and Daniel Noah's Spectre Vision might be interested in sending along a pitch of their own, as the producers recently told us that they have long fantasized about having a crack at A Nightmare on Elm Street. Who'd have thought Frodo would love Freddy Krueger? Keep in mind that this article is nearly 3 years old, but still apparently they're accepting pitches, and I know that this video is never gonna catch any traction. This is just me fanboying and giving my thoughts on to where these characters might be. And again, this is just purely for fun, and I love this stuff because it's what being a fan is all about. So like I said, it's gonna be a direct sequel to the original 1984 A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a direct sequel to the original 1984 Elm Street film, so we are retconning Freddy's Revenge onwards. All those characters, what happened, that timeline just never existed. No power glove! So I put Nancy is still alive and either married to Glenn or someone else, because in one of the endings of the original 1984 film, Glenn, Tina, Nancy, Rod, they seem to have all survived. All we saw was the jump rope girls at the end, and then obviously Heather Langenkamp went on to portray Nancy again in Dream Warriors, so it could be one of those things where she's married to Glenn. Again, I know that a certain actor has passed, and I'm going to touch on that. This is all very silly when you think about it. I know Heather Langenkamp will be down to play Nancy again. She relished playing Nancy. And the fact that Robert Englund is still so sprightly, he says he may or may not have one more Elm Street left in the tank. He always goes back and forth between, nah, I'm done, to, yeah, I definitely do one more. If they got Johnny Depp back and had him and Heather Langenkamp in this film, it would be so much fun to see. And I love the chemistry they had in the original film, and they were like 20 years old. They were fucking babies, man. So if she is married to someone else, sure, but honestly, I would love to see her still married to Glenn and them have a couple of kids. And I'll touch on that in a little bit with the notes I've written here. Those kids play an integral role with the storyline and the resurrection of Freddy, or Fred, because we're going with the original theme here. So Nancy's dad, Donald, has never come to terms with what happened. He's still a very broken man after seeing the events that happened. He eventually saw the ultimate demise of his ex-wife, and it's traumatized him. And I love that they kind of touch on that in Dream Warriors. You know, he's this alcoholic drunk that's now demoted to a security guard and has never really recovered, whereas Nancy has chosen to move forward with her life. So, okay, I'm really sorry if my camera angle changes then, because I stopped the camera, got the microphone out, turned off the light, and I realized I had one more thing to say, so I'll edit it back into what I was talking about. John Saxon. The fact that we unfortunately lost John Saxon is shitty enough as it is. In terms of, hypothetically, if we were to bring Lieutenant Thompson back, find an actor that looks very similar to John Saxon with the mannerisms and stuff like that, hell, maybe even a bit of enhancement, a bit of digital deep faking, stuff like that, or prosthetics, much like they did with Tom Jones Jr. portraying Donald Pleasance's Dr. Loomis in Halloween Kills in the flashback scenes. It sucks because losing John Saxon was losing a piece of the franchise. You look at John Saxon, Heather Langenkamp, and Robert Englund, and Wes Craven as well. They were the pillars of the original film. They were just brilliant. And also the fact that we've lost Wes Craven. But it's still cool that his estate still wants pictures, they're interested, they're genuinely keen to see where this franchise could go. You could have them on board as obviously creative consultants, producers, stuff like that, be part of the screenwriting process. But yeah, the fact that we don't have John Saxon around, unfortunately, just sucks. But there is a way around it, but it just still wouldn't be the same. Now, I also love the notion that 1428 Elm Street has been abandoned ever since. It's just been boarded up, dilapidated. No one wants to touch it. No one wants to buy the land because of what happened. It's just got that haunted, eerie feeling, and when people check it out and hear what happened, it's a big fat no. And this is obviously a very touchy subject, but it kind of would have that shock value and give reason for Freddy to strike fear once again. Let's just say hypothetically that Donald Thompson is a struggling alcoholic, still not coping, and in the midst of all that, he takes himself to the abandoned 1428 Elm Street where he lived, where he had a family, where he had a loving wife and daughter at one point, drinks himself silly and ultimately takes his own life in 1428 Elm Street. When Nancy hears of her father's death and finds out where he took his own life, that then strikes up the fear. That is what then regenerates Freddy, gives him a little bit of strength to be present in the dream world again where he can start stalking. If Nancy has completely forgotten him for the 35 years, nearly 40 years, then he's useless. If she's just able to block that out, but all of a sudden this memory comes back of 1428, her father has now died at the place that her mother has died at, that's more than an incentive for Nancy to have that fear again, for Freddy to regenerate and start coming back. Now here's where it comes into play if Nancy and Glenn, or Nancy and whoever, have children. When Freddy is able to dream stalk again because of the bloodline, he could go after Nancy's kids, or kids. She could have one, could have two, she could have five, who knows. But the fact that he could be able to go after her children after what he did to her and what he nearly did to her is terrifying. And the fact that her kids could come to her saying, "Mom, I'm having these weird dreams. There's this guy in this red and green sweater," then that fear is accelerated and amplified. This is going to be really dark, but it could get to the point where, you know, Nancy has children that would be in their teens, like close to her age when she was in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy could kill one of them. Freddy could kill all of them, and it just gives Nancy that incentive, or Nancy and Glenn that incentive, to go into their dreams and confront Freddy again. And it could be a nice little moment where they recreate the scene where Glenn kind of watches over Nancy when she goes to confront Freddy for the first time and Glenn falls asleep. There could be some mirroring of that scene. I don't know. Again, these are just the thoughts that I have. So those are my thoughts on the overall plot of what this film could be. If it was a direct sequel to this, you know, we've obviously got a broken man that is Lieutenant, or not Lieutenant anymore, Donald Thompson, drinking himself silly, takes himself to the abandoned 1428 Elm Street. It could be one of those things where he goes into Marge's old room and sees the bed where he saw her meet her demise when she was that skeleton being sucked down into the bed, takes his own life. That news that Donald took his own life in 1428 then strikes up fear in Nancy, and then starts the regeneration of Freddy, who's able to then stalk Nancy, Glenn, her kids in their dreams once again. In terms of the climax of the film, I have no idea. Obviously, like I said, could be one of those things where one of Nancy and Glenn's children loses their life at the hands of Freddy, and then Nancy and Glenn have to go in, grab him, bring him out of the dream world, and kill him once and for all. They could also do the thing where they borrow something from Dream Warriors, where they have to bury him in hallowed ground or burn him once again. Now, lastly, the design of Freddy. This is something I get really excited about. I love the fact that we had a much more deteriorated and older looking Michael Myers, which makes sense because we're in the real world, we're in reality. I don't know how that would kind of hone over to the dream world, but I love the fact that we're keeping with the part 1 aesthetic, the part 1 makeup, the part 1 sweater without the green stripes on the sleeves, the glove, the fedora, the Dickies pants, the Dickies boots. I love that, but so much more weathered, dilapidated, deteriorated, just decrepit, and the makeup, the burn makeup, pieces of flesh falling off, utilizing subtle visual effects to show teeth, because originally that was the idea David Miller and Wes Craven had. They wanted to have exposed teeth on Robert, but then David Miller's like, it's gonna look too hokey because we don't have the proper visual effects, and it'll just be like pasting teeth on the side of a cheek. Much in the vein of what they did with the 2010 remake. They had green visual effect dots on Jackie Earle Haley's cheek, and then they superimposed in muscle, teeth, stuff like that. They could definitely do that. And if they got Robert back, holy shit, that would be brilliant. But again, hidden in the shadows, barely saying a word, and just being downright mean and evil is what I would love to see. And have the glove oxidized, old, like it's been sitting in a puddle of water in the boiler room for 35, 40 years. And the boiler room has to feature again. I know that obviously the Lincoln Heights jail is condemned. I actually think it's been demolished. Let me check. So it was 2018 when I did the Elm Street locations documentary, went and saw the Lincoln Heights jail condemned. But we tried to get in, and apparently it was set to be demolished. Oh no, it still seems to be there. The reason why we thought it was going to be demolished is because a developer bought it, and essentially when a developer buys something, it's a death sentence for an old historic place like that. Oh right, okay, so Lincoln Heights Makers District, which will feature commercial and manufacturing spaces, a public market, creative offices, live work housing, amphitheater with green space. I would love to see them recreate the boiler room on a set, on a soundstage, because the boiler room has to feature. That is Freddy's Coliseum. That is where shit goes down, man. Without the boiler room, Freddy's nothing. That's essentially home base for him. So guys, I know this video is very different, a lot of rambling, and just me fanboying the fuck out, but I've had these thoughts in my head for a couple of years now, and with Halloween Kills Out, and that obviously being, you know, part of the direct sequel tying in with 2018 to Halloween 1978, I just thought it'd be a fun idea to kind of pitch my idea of a direct sequel to the original 1984 Nightmare on Elm Street. And you know, I've been talking with my good buddy Cam, we've been bouncing ideas back and forth, and it would just be so much fun to see. I'd love to see Blumhouse give the Halloween treatment to the Elm Street franchise. So guys, with that being said, drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. What would be your idea for a direct sequel pitch to the original Nightmare on Elm Street? Guys, wherever you are in the world, have yourselves an absolute cracker of a day. I hope you're well, hope you're happy, be merry, be silly, and until next time, ghouls and ghoulettes, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.